My name is Lila, and the day I discovered my brother had forged my signature to steal my family's house was the day my world flipped upside down. I never thought I'd be the one sitting across from my own flesh and blood, staring him down with a deed in my hand, feeling a mix of betrayal and disbelief. It all started a few weeks ago when I got a call from my mom, her voice shaky and filled with urgency. "Lila, you need to come home. There's something we need to talk about." I could hear the heaviness in her tone, that familiar undertone of distress that always tugged at my heart. I packed my bag quickly, my mind racing with thoughts of what could possibly be troubling her. The family home, a place filled with laughter and countless memories, had recently been put up for sale, but I thought it was simply due to my parents wanting to downsize now that my brother Jake and I were grown. Little did I know, Jake had other plans. When I arrived at our old house, the weight of nostalgia washed over me. I stepped inside, greeted by the faint scent of cinnamon from my mom's famous cookies. But something felt off. My mom was sitting at the kitchen table, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of her coffee mug, and I could tell she had been crying. It was then that she dropped the bombshell. "Lila, Jake has taken control of the house. He forged your signature on the deed." I felt my stomach drop as the words sunk in. Forged my signature? How could he do that? My brother had always been the charming one, the one who could talk his way out of anything. But this was beyond comprehension. "What do you mean he forged my signature?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, hoping that maybe this was all some sort of misunderstanding. My mom explained how Jake had convinced her that selling the house was the best option, all while secretly plotting to keep it for himself. He'd been pressuring her to sign documents, claiming they were just routine. "I thought he was just being responsible," she said, her voice breaking. I could feel the anger bubbling up inside me, a mix of rage and sadness. This was not just about the house. It was a betrayal of trust. What would you have done? Let me know below. After that conversation, my mind was racing. I needed to confront Jake, but I also wanted to gather as much evidence as I could. I spent the next few days doing some digging. I reached out to a lawyer who specialized in property disputes, and together we pieced together the timeline of events. It turned out Jake had been planning this for months, using my absence and busy life in the city to his advantage. I felt sick to my stomach every time I thought about how easily he had manipulated the situation. I was determined to confront him, not just for myself, but for my parents who had worked so hard for this home. I decided to invite him to brunch, thinking it would be a casual setting where I could drop the bomb without making it too confrontational. I envisioned it as a scene from a movie, where I would pull out the deed and watch his face crumble as he realized I was on to him. The day of brunch arrived, and I felt a mix of anxiety and resolve. I arrived at the restaurant early, my heart pounding as I took a seat at a table that overlooked the bustling street. I could see families enjoying their meals, laughter ringing out, completely unaware of the storm that was about to unfold in my life. I had printed a copy of the forged deed, and it felt heavy in my bag, a weight I was ready to unload. When Jake finally arrived, he was the picture of nonchalance, wearing a casual smile that made me want to roll my eyes. "Hey, sis. Good to see you," he said, sliding into the booth opposite me. I forced a smile back, trying to keep my emotions in check. We chatted about mundane things, the weather, his job, but I could barely focus. All I could think about was how to make my move. "Jake, I wanted to talk about something serious," I finally said, my voice steady. His smile faltered for just a moment, but he quickly regained his composure. "What's up?" I took a deep breath, my heart racing. I pulled out the deed, sliding it across the table toward him. "I know what you did." His eyes widened slightly, and for a moment, I could see the mask slip. "What are you talking about?" he replied, feigning innocence, but I could tell he was nervous, and that made me feel a surge of power. I leaned in, lowering my voice. "You forged my signature to take control of the house, didn't you? You lied to Mom and me." The words hung in the air like a thick fog, and I watched as reality set in for him. The denial, the anger, the realization that I wasn't going to back down. This was only the beginning of a battle I was determined to win. Little did I know that confronting him was just the tip of the iceberg. The fallout from this brunch would shake our family to its core, and I was ready to fight for what was rightfully mine. As I sat there, watching the wheels turn in Jake's mind. I could almost see the calculations racing through him. The restaurant buzzed around us, the clinking of glasses and the hum of chatter creating a stark contrast to the storm brewing at our table. His facade was slipping, and I relished the moment. You think you can just take what's mine without any consequences? Do you even care about what this means for Mom? My voice trembled slightly, but I held my ground. Jake leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms over his chest defensively. You don't understand the whole situation, Sarah. I was trying to protect us. You were busy with your life, and I thought... He paused, searching for the right words. I thought it would be easier if I just took care of it. Easier for who? I shot back, incredulous. You think this was for me? You think lying and stealing is protecting anyone? I could feel my pulse quickening, the anger rising in me like a boiling pot. How could he even attempt to justify this? I did what I had to do, he exclaimed, his voice rising, drawing glances from nearby tables. I thought you'd thank me for handling everything. Thank you. I could hardly believe my ears. Jake, you've ripped the floor from under my feet. This isn't just about the house. It's about trust. It's about family. The words tumbled out, raw and unfiltered. He rolled his eyes as if I were being dramatic. You're overreacting. It's just a piece of property. Just a piece of property? I echoed incredulously. This is our childhood home, the place where we spent countless summers and holidays. It's not just a piece of paper to me. I could feel my throat tightening, emotions spilling over. I was angry, yes, but there was also a sense of betrayal that cut deeper than any knife ever could. This house was more than bricks and mortar. It was the embodiment of our shared history, of our family. Maybe if you had been around more, you'd understand. He shot back, his tone hardening. I had to make a decision. You were busy with your job, your life. You weren't coming back to help. The accusation stung. So you decide to take matters into your own hands by forging my signature? That's your solution? Look, I was desperate, he admitted, his voice dropping as he softened slightly. Mom was struggling with her health, and I felt like I had no choice. I didn't want to lose the house. It's the only thing we have left. His vulnerability caught me off guard. I had seen my brother as a schemer, but now I was seeing a glimpse of his fear. Still, it didn't excuse what he had done. You should have talked to me, Jake. We could have figured something out together. Silence fell between us, heavy and thick. I took a sip of my coffee, trying to gather my thoughts. I had never imagined our relationship would come to this. We were supposed to be allies, not adversaries. But here we were, fighting over the very foundation of our family. Sarah, he finally said, his voice low and almost pleading. I'm sorry. I messed up, but I didn't mean to hurt you. Sorry, such a simple word, yet it felt inadequate, like a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. Sorry doesn't change what you did, I responded quietly. You need to understand the gravity of this. I can't just let it go. He sighed, looking defeated. What do you want me to do? I can't just magically undo it. I took a deep breath, gathering my resolve. I want you to admit what you did. I want you to come clean to Mom. She deserves to know the truth. Jake shook his head, panic flashing across his face. You can't be serious. That will destroy her. Maybe it's time for some hard truths, Jake, I said firmly. It's a toxic cycle to keep lying. This is going to come out one way or another, and it's better if it comes from you. The tension between us was electric. I could see the internal struggle on his face, the desire to protect our mother clashing with the reality of his actions. I can't believe this is happening, he whispered, looking down at the table. I never wanted it to get this far. Well, it has, I said, trying to soften my tone. And now we have to deal with it. Together. He finally met my gaze, and in that moment, I could see the weight of his choices pressing down on him. I guess I thought I could handle it all, that if I just took control, everything would work out. Control? I scoffed, anger bubbling up again. You took control by undermining me, by lying to me. You didn't handle anything. You created a mess. As the words left my mouth, I felt a shift in our dynamic. It was as if the air around us had changed. The fight wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about the very essence of who we were as siblings. "Okay," he said finally, his voice almost a whisper. "I'll talk to her. I'll tell her the truth. But you need to be there too. We can't do this alone." I nodded slowly, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. "I'll be there, but you have to take responsibility. This is your mess to own." "Fine," he replied, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of determination in his eyes. "I'll make it right. Somehow." It wasn't a solution, not yet, but it felt like a start. And as we finished our brunch in an uneasy silence, I wondered what the fallout would look like. Would Mom understand? Could our family survive this fracture? I didn't know, but one thing was clear. The fight for our home and our relationship was just beginning. As we left the restaurant, the sun was shining brightly, almost mockingly so, as if it were unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface of my heart. The street was bustling with life, people laughing, children playing, but all I could hear was the pounding of my own thoughts. I replayed our conversation over and over in my mind, trying to dissect it, make sense of it. My brother, my flesh and blood, had crossed a line I never thought he would. I felt betrayed, but more than that, I felt an overwhelming sadness for what was happening to us. On the drive back, the silence was suffocating. I stole glances at him, trying to read his expressions, but he was focused on the road, his jaw clenched tight. I wondered what he was thinking. Did he regret his actions? Or was he still convinced that what he did was justified? I wanted to scream, to shake him, to make him understand how deeply he had hurt me. But instead, I swallowed my words, choosing to preserve whatever fragile peace we had managed to establish over brunch. When we finally arrived at my apartment, the weight of the day settled heavily on my shoulders. I stepped inside, the familiarity of my surroundings offering little comfort. I needed space to think, to process. I headed straight to my bedroom, closing the door behind me. I sank onto my bed, staring up at the ceiling, trying to navigate through the whirlwind of emotions. How had we gotten here? How had my brother become a stranger? A person capable of such deceit? I thought about our childhood. We had been inseparable, partners in crime, always scheming and dreaming together. But life had a way of reshaping relationships, and somewhere along the line, we had drifted apart. The responsibilities of adulthood had taken their toll, and I wondered if that was what had led him to make such a desperate choice. Did he feel threatened by me? By my independence? I shook my head, the thoughts swirling like a storm cloud, refusing to settle. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying our brunch conversation, dissecting each word. I knew we couldn't ignore what had happened, but confronting it felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, peering into an abyss. The next day, I decided to call Mom. It was time to involve her, and I needed her support more than ever. I picked up my phone, hesitating for a moment before dialing her number. "Hey, sweetie. How's everything?" She answered, her voice bright and cheerful. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something important." Her tone shifted, concern creeping in. "Is everything okay?" I hesitated, feeling the lump in my throat. "Not really. It's about the house." There was a moment of silence on the other end before she responded. "What about the house?" I explained everything. The forgery, the betrayal, and my brother's actions. I could hear the shock in her voice as I spoke, and as I recounted the events, I felt a mixture of relief and anxiety. When I finished, there was another silence, heavy and palpable. "Oh, honey, I can't believe this. Your brother, I just don't understand why he would do something like this." "Neither do I admitted. "But we need to address it. I can't let him get away with this." "Of course not. We'll figure this out together," she assured me. "When do you want to meet?" "Soon," I said, feeling a sense of urgency. "I want to bring the deed and show you everything." "Okay, let's plan for tomorrow. We can meet for lunch." "Sounds good." After hanging up, I felt a sense of purpose wash over me. This was a battle I was willing to fight, not just for myself, but for our family. The thought of facing my brother again made my stomach churn, but I knew it was necessary. As the sun rose the next morning, I gathered my thoughts and prepared for what lay ahead. When I met Mom for lunch, I arrived early, my heart racing as I clutched the deed tightly in my hands. The restaurant was bright and cheerful, the opposite of the turmoil I felt inside. I chose a table by the window, hoping the natural light would ease my nerves. Moments later, Mom walked in, her face a mixture of concern and determination. "Hey, sweetie," she said, pulling me into a warm embrace. "Hey, Mom," I replied, feeling comforted by her presence. We sat down, and I slid the deed across the table. She looked at it, her brow furrowing in confusion. "What's this?" "That's what I want to talk about," I said, my voice steadying. "This is proof of what he did. I can't just sit back and let him steal everything from me." Mom studied the document, her expression shifting from confusion to understanding. "You're right. We need to confront him together. This is unacceptable." As we talked, I felt a fire reignite within me. I wasn't alone in this fight, and that made all the difference. We discussed our plan of action, and I felt a renewed sense of hope. The road ahead would be difficult, but I was determined to reclaim not just my home, but my relationship with my brother, no matter how fractured it had become. It was time to face the truth and find a way to mend what had been broken. My heart raced as Mom and I finalized our plans, the weight of the deed still heavy in my hands. We knew we couldn't just confront him without a strategy. We decided to wait until Sunday brunch, a regular ritual in our family that had become a comforting tradition over the years. It was supposed to be a time for laughter, warmth, and connection. Little did I know, this Sunday would turn into the most pivotal moment in our lives. The day arrived, and I woke up with a mix of anticipation and dread. The sun poured through my window, illuminating the space with a golden hue, but it couldn't chase away the nagging anxiety twisting in my stomach. I got ready, trying to focus on the routine of selecting my outfit, applying makeup, and choosing my favorite earrings. I needed to feel strong, empowered even, to face my brother. After all, I was not just fighting for a house. I was fighting for my family. When we arrived at our favorite brunch spot, I was struck by how normal everything felt. The aroma of fresh coffee and baked goods wafted through the air, and the sound of laughter and clinking glasses filled the room. But in my mind, everything felt different. I felt like I was stepping onto a battlefield, armed with the truth. Mom and I took our usual table, a cozy spot near the back where we could watch the world go by. As we settled in, my brother Jake strolled in, his casual demeanor contrasting sharply with the storm brewing inside me. He greeted us with his trademark smile, completely oblivious to the tension that hung in the air. "Hey, you two, what's up?" he asked, sliding into the chair opposite us. "Just enjoying some brunch," I replied, forcing a smile, my heart pounding as I felt the deed tucked neatly in my purse. The conversation flowed naturally at first. Light banter about the weather, jokes about his latest questionable haircut, but I struggled to keep the facade up. The real reason for this brunch weighed heavily on my mind. It was time to confront the elephant in the room. "Jake, can we talk about something serious?" I finally asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. He raised an eyebrow, curiosity piqued. "Sure, what's on your mind?" I exchanged a glance with Mom, who nodded encouragingly. "It's about the house," I said, my voice steadying despite my racing heart. His expression shifted, and I could see the wheels turning in his head. "What about it? I thought we were all good there." I took a deep breath. "We're not good, Jake. I found something out. Something that you did." His casual demeanor faltered. "What are you talking about?" I pulled the deed from my purse and laid it on the table, the paper crinkling slightly as I did. "This. You forged my signature to get the house. How could you do that?" The air grew thick with tension, and I watched as his face paled, the color draining from his cheeks. "What? That's ridiculous. I would never do something like that." "Really? Because this says otherwise," I pressed, my voice rising slightly. I didn't want to believe it at first, but the evidence is right here. You took something that didn't belong to you. Jake leaned back in his chair, his bravado crumbling. "You don't understand. I did what I had to do. I thought I was helping us." "Helping us? By stealing from me?" I shot back, my frustration boiling over. You put me in a position where I didn't have a choice. I'm not just going to stand by and let you get away with this." Her mom reached across the table, placing her hand on mine. "Jake, this isn't just about the house. It's about trust, family, and honesty. You crossed a line." He looked between us, his expression a mix of anger and disbelief. "You don't know what I've been going through. I thought I was saving us from losing everything." "Saving us? By lying?" I questioned, incredulous. "You've hurt me, and you've hurt this family. We need to be honest with each other, not resort to manipulation and deceit." The atmosphere was thick with unresolved tension, and as I glanced around the restaurant, I wondered if anyone else could sense the turmoil brewing at our table. I felt exposed, raw, and yet I knew I was doing the right thing. I had to stand my ground. "Listen," I said, trying to soften my tone. "I want to understand why you did this. We can't move forward without talking about it. I'm not trying to tear us apart, but we have to face the truth." For a moment, Jake was silent, his face a whirlwind of emotions. I could see the gears in his mind turning, and I hoped he would find the courage to be honest with me. "I was scared," he finally admitted, his voice trembling slightly. "I didn't want to lose the house. It felt like everything was slipping away from me. I thought if I could just get it in my name, I could fix things. But you didn't fix anything, Jake. You made it worse," I said gently. "We can work through this together, but only if we're honest with each other. I can't forgive you unless I know you truly understand the gravity of what you've done." As I spoke, I felt a small glimmer of hope. This was a pivotal moment, one that could either tear us apart or bring us back together. I waited, holding my breath, hoping my brother would finally see the truth. I never thought I'd be sitting here trying to get my brother to understand just how serious this all was. I continued, my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside me. "You've always been the one I looked up to, Jake. I never imagined you'd betray me like this. We're family, and I thought we were stronger than this." Jake's shoulders slumped, and he stared at the floor, his expression shifting from fear to shame. It was as if the weight of his actions was finally crashing down on him. "I know I messed up," he whispered, "but I thought I could fix it before it was too late. I didn't want to lose the house, the memories, everything we built together." That hit me hard. The house had been our childhood home, filled with laughter, family dinners, and the occasional argument over who would get the biggest slice of cake. But it was also where our parents had raised us, where we'd celebrated birthdays and holidays. I understood the emotional attachment he had to the place. I felt it too. But the method he chose to keep it was fundamentally wrong. "Jake," I said softly, "I get it. I really do. But you can't justify lying and stealing from me. You can't just take what's not yours because you're scared. It's not how family works." He looked up at me then, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I thought I could talk to you after I got the deed, and we could work it out. I thought you'd understand once you saw the value of keeping it in the family. Do you really think I'd support that? That I'd just sit back and let you take something that was never yours to begin with?" I felt a rush of anger, but I fought to keep my tone calm. "I would have worked with you. We could have found a way to keep the house without betraying each other. You went behind my back, Jake. You made a choice that broke my trust." He opened his mouth to respond, but I raised my hand to stop him. "Let me finish. This isn't just about the house anymore. This is about you and me, and our relationship. I can't let this go unless I know you truly understand the impact of what you've done." Jake took a deep breath and nodded slowly, the reality starting to seep in. "You're right. I was selfish. I thought I was protecting us, but I was just thinking about myself. I can't believe I did this to you." I could see the sincerity in his eyes, but I also knew that words were just words. Actions were what mattered. "We need to work through this, Jake, but it's going to take more than just an apology. It's going to require trust. And right now you've shattered that. What you did. It can't just be brushed under the rug." He rubbed the back of his neck, a nervous habit I recognized well. "What can I do to make it right?" His voice was tentative, filled with a mixture of hope and despair. I paused, searching for the right words. "First, we need to go to the bank together and clear this up. We need to talk to them about the forged signature. I want to make it clear that I never authorized this. After that, we need to sit down with a lawyer. maybe even a mediator, so we can figure out what happens next. I want to keep the house, but I also want to know that you're willing to work through this, not just for me, but for yourself too." Jake nodded, the weight of my words hanging heavily in the air. "I'll do whatever it takes," he said earnestly. "I don't want to lose you, sis. You're more important to me than any house." Hearing him say that made my heart ache. This was the brother I loved, the one who'd stood by me through thick and thin. But this betrayal had created a chasm between us that felt insurmountable. "I want to believe you, Jake, but trust takes time to rebuild. You need to show me that you're committed to making this right, not just for my sake, but for yours." We sat there in silence for a few moments, both of us lost in our thoughts. The tension in the room was palpable. I could feel my heart racing, a mix of hope and fear swirling inside me. What if he didn't truly understand? What if this was just another moment of empty promises? "Okay," he finally said, breaking the silence. "Let's do it. I'll make the call to the bank tomorrow. I'll face the consequences of my actions. I owe you that much." "Thank you," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. It wasn't a solution, but it was a start, a tiny step towards healing the rift between us. As we finished our coffee, I felt a flicker of optimism. Maybe we could mend this. Maybe we could find a way back to each other. But in the back of my mind, I knew it would take more than just words. It would take time, understanding, and above all, a commitment to honesty. But for now, we had a plan, and that was something to hold on to. I reminded myself that healing wasn't a straight path. It was often filled with twists and turns, but I was willing to navigate it, as long as Jake was too. It was going to be a long road ahead, but I had hope that we would emerge stronger on the other side. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose that I hadn't felt in a while. The sun peeked through the curtains, casting warm light across my room. I took a deep breath, letting the soft morning air fill my lungs. Today felt different. Today felt like a turning point. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat down at the kitchen table, the weight of anticipation heavy on my shoulders. I knew Jake would be making that call, and the thought both excited and terrified me. What if things didn't go as we hoped? I closed my eyes for a moment and imagined all the possible outcomes, feeling that familiar knot of anxiety in my stomach. As I sipped my coffee, my phone buzzed on the table. I grabbed it quickly, my heart racing. It was a message from Jake. "Just got off the phone with the bank. They're willing to work with us." My breath caught in my throat. Hope surged through me. This was a crucial moment, and I could already feel the tension easing just a little. I texted him back. "That's amazing. What's the next step?" Waiting for his reply felt like an eternity, but I knew it was just the beginning. I spent the morning going over our budget, calculating everything to see how we could manage the payments. I wanted to make sure we were prepared, that we wouldn't fall back into the same traps we had before. It was a tedious task, but somehow it felt empowering. I was taking control of our future, and I couldn't help but smile at the thought. When Jake arrived later that afternoon, he had a look of cautious optimism on his face. "They're going to give us a grace period for the next few months while we get everything sorted out," he said, his voice a mixture of disbelief and relief. "We have time to figure this out without falling behind." I could feel the weight of the world beginning to lift, but I knew we couldn't let our guard down completely. "That's great news, but we have to make sure we stick to our plan," I replied, trying to keep my excitement in check. "We can't ignore the root of the problem." He nodded, looking serious. "I know. I've been thinking about what you said the other day, about honesty. It's going to take more than just managing the finances. We need to be open about everything." I couldn't agree more. It's about building trust again, Jake. We can't just focus on the numbers. We have to communicate better. I want to know what you're feeling, what you're struggling with. As we talked, I felt a sense of connection growing between us. It was as if we were finally on the same wavelength, both committed to making this work. But I also knew that the journey wouldn't be smooth. I glanced around the room, taking in the familiar sights, the photos on the walls, the cluttered bookshelf filled with our shared memories. Each item felt heavy with the weight of our history, both the good and the bad. That evening, we decided to take a walk around the neighborhood. The air was cool, and the leaves crunched beneath our feet, a reminder that change was all around us. We strolled through the park, the laughter of children playing nearby serving as a beautiful backdrop to our conversation. "Do you think we've changed?" I asked Jake, curious about his thoughts. He paused, looking thoughtful. "I think we're learning, at least. The old patterns are hard to break, but we're making an effort." "It's a start, right?" I smiled at him, appreciating his honesty. "It is, but change takes time. I guess what I'm wondering is, do you really believe we can make it through this?" Jake turned to me, his expression serious. "I want to believe it. I really do. But we have to keep working at it day by day. It's not going to be easy." As we continued our walk, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were at a pivotal moment in our relationship. I wanted to ask him if he felt the same way, if he understood the weight of what we were facing. Instead, I found myself reflecting on how far we had come. A few weeks ago, we were on the brink of collapse, unable to see a way forward. Now, we were taking small steps toward healing, and it felt monumental. Later that night, as I lay in bed, I thought about everything we had discussed. My mind raced with possibilities, and I felt a mix of excitement and fear. I wanted to believe that we could rebuild what had been broken, but I also knew that it would take more than good intentions to make it happen. What if we stumbled again? What if we fell back into old habits? The next few days passed in a blur of optimism and caution. We met with a financial advisor to map out a realistic plan and began to talk openly about our fears and expectations. I found myself opening up more than I had in a long time, sharing not just my worries about money, but also the insecurities that had been lurking beneath the surface. It felt liberating, to be honest, but I also felt vulnerable. One evening, as we sat on the couch, I turned to Jake. "What do you think is the biggest hurdle we face right now?" I asked, trying to gauge his thoughts. He looked pensive for a moment. "I think it's about vulnerability. It's easy to put up walls, to hide behind our fears. But if we really want to move forward, we have to be willing to be open with each other, even when it's uncomfortable." His words resonated deeply with me. I realized that we were both scared, but perhaps that fear was necessary. It meant we cared enough to fight for what we had built together. I took a deep breath, feeling a newfound determination wash over me. As we continued to navigate this journey, I couldn't help but wonder about others who might be going through something similar. Have you ever faced a significant challenge in a relationship? How did you overcome it? Let me know below. I knew I was not alone in this, and together, we could find the strength to keep moving forward. The days that followed that conversation with Jake felt different. It was as if we had taken a step closer to each other, peeling back the layers of our fears and insecurities. Yet, in the back of my mind, I couldn't shake off the weight of the situation with my brother. The house loomed over everything like a dark cloud, threatening to rain on our newfound clarity. I had put off confronting him about the forgery, hoping that maybe it would resolve itself, or that I could find the right moment to bring it up. But as every day passed, that moment felt further away. One Saturday morning, I woke up with a resolute feeling. I had to face this head on. Jake had plans to meet some friends, and it was the perfect opportunity for me to gather my thoughts and prepare for the conversation I had been dreading. I brewed a cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table, the sunlight filtering through the window, casting a warm glow over the empty space. I pulled the deed from my bag and spread it out before me, the ink still fresh in my memory. I traced the signature with my finger, the unmistakable curls and loops that weren't mine. It made my stomach churn. I knew I had to approach this delicately. Although my brother and I hadn't been close recently, there was still a part of me that wanted to understand why he had done it. Was it desperation? Greed? Or something deeper that I hadn't considered? I took a deep breath, letting the aroma of the coffee fill my senses, grounding me. I had to be ready for whatever response would come. Later that afternoon, I decided to invite him for brunch at our favorite cafe. It was a casual spot, the kind of place that felt like home, filled with the smells of fresh pastries and coffee brewing. I hoped that the familiar atmosphere would help ease the tension of our conversation. I texted him, and he responded almost immediately, saying he'd be there in an hour. I could feel the butterflies in my stomach, a mix of nerves and anticipation. As I walked into the cafe, The hustle and bustle around me felt oddly comforting. I found a table in the corner, one that gave me a clear view of the entrance. I ordered a cinnamon roll and a cappuccino, hoping the sweetness would calm my nerves. My mind raced with the possible scenarios of how this brunch would unfold. Would he deny it? Would he apologize? Would he even show up? When he finally arrived, I could see the casual confidence he often exuded, but today it felt different. There was an edge to him, a slight uncertainty that made me realize he was aware that something was off. He sat down, and we exchanged awkward pleasantries. I could feel the weight of the deed in my bag, pressing against my side like a ticking clock, reminding me that I had to speak up. After a few moments of small talk, I decided to cut straight to the chase. "So, I wanted to talk to you about something important," I said, trying to keep my tone steady. He looked up, his expression shifting from relaxed to alert. "It's about the house." The moment hung in the air, thick and heavy. I watched as his face paled slightly, and for a second, I wondered if I had made a mistake by being so direct. But I pressed on, fueled by a mix of fear and determination. "I found out that you forged my signature to get the deed. I don't understand why you would do that." His reaction was almost immediate. He leaned back in his chair, his arms crossing defensively over his chest. "You don't know the whole story, Sarah," he replied, his voice low but steady. "I was trying to help." "Help? By stealing from me?" I shot back, trying to keep my emotions in check. "You know that I wouldn't have said no if you'd just asked. We could have figured it out together." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I didn't think you would understand. I was desperate to keep the family home. It's all we have left from Mom and Dad. I thought if I could just secure it, we could hold on to something that mattered." The words hung between us, and I felt a mix of frustration and a tinge of empathy. I understood the sentiment behind wanting to preserve our childhood home, but his methods were beyond comprehension. "You could have just talked to me," I repeated, my voice softer now. "We could have worked something out. I know, I messed up, but you have to believe me, I wasn't trying to hurt you." His eyes were pleading, and for a moment, I saw a glimpse of the brother I used to admire, the one who would always stand up for me, who had my back through thick and thin. I took a deep breath, the tension in my chest easing just a little. "You do realize how serious this is, right? There are legal consequences to what you did." He nodded, looking defeated. "I know. I've been stressed about it, but I didn't know how to fix it. I thought if I could just make it happen, everything would be okay." I stared at him, feeling the weight of our shared history and the rift that had formed between us. "But you know it's not okay, right? You can't just take things into your own hands like that. We're family. We're supposed to support each other, not betray one another." Silence fell between us, as the realization of what he'd done settled heavily in the air. I could see the regret in his eyes, the understanding that he had crossed a line. I reached into my bag and pulled out the deed, sliding it across the table toward him. "I don't know how we move forward from this, but we need to start by being honest. I want to know how you plan to fix this." He looked down at the document, his face a mask of turmoil. I could see the internal battle he was fighting, and I knew that whatever happened next would change everything between us. He picked up the deed, his hands trembling slightly as he examined the paper. I held my breath, wondering if he realized the gravity of what he was holding. It wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a symbol of trust, of family, and now of betrayal. I didn't think it would come to this," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. It felt like an admission of guilt, a confession that needed to be said out loud, but I wasn't sure it was enough. "Didn't think what?" I pressed, trying to keep my emotions in check. "That you would betray your own sister? That you would go behind my back and sign my name without my consent? What did you think would happen when the truth came out?" He looked up, a mixture of shame and defiance flashing across his face. I thought you'd understand. I thought if I just got the house, you'd eventually come around. That maybe we could fix it together." I shook my head, disbelief washing over me. "Fix what together? Your deception, your manipulation. This isn't a problem we can fix with a family dinner or a heart-to-heart. This is a legal matter, and it's serious." The gravity of the situation began to settle into his expression, and I could see the fight slowly leaving him. I was desperate, okay? I lost my job, and I thought if I secured the house, I'd have a chance to get back on my feet. I didn't want to burden you with my problems. By stealing from me? I shot back, my voice rising. You thought it would be easier to just take what was mine instead of asking for help? You know I would have helped you if you'd just been honest with me. I've always had your back. But you went and did this. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized as a sign of his frustration. I thought I could make it work. I really did. I thought if I could just get the house and prove to you I could be responsible, it would all be okay. Responsible? I scoffed. You're not being responsible. You're being reckless. You can't build a life on lies. Trust is the foundation of everything. You've shattered that. He fell silent, the weight of my words hanging in the air. I could see the hurt in his eyes, but I knew it was not my job to coddle him. He had made his choices, and now he had to face the consequences. So what now? He finally asked, his voice tinged with defeat. I took a deep breath, trying to formulate the right words. First, you need to understand that this isn't just going to blow over. We have to take the necessary steps to fix what you've done. You need to contact a lawyer and start the process of undoing this. You forged my signature, and that's a serious offense. He nodded slowly, the reality of his actions washing over him. I know. I'll do whatever it takes to make it right. I promise. I hope you mean that, I replied, my heart heavy. But more than that, you need to learn from this. I can't just let it slide because you're my brother. It's not fair to me, and it's not fair to anyone else who's ever trusted you. He looked at me, the regret in his eyes palpable. I never wanted to hurt you. I felt trapped. Trapped? I get it. Life can be suffocating at times, but you can't let that push you to make choices that hurt the people you love, I said, my voice softening slightly. You have to find a way to ask for help instead of taking it. We sat in silence for a moment, the tension in the air slowly dissipating as we both reflected on what had transpired. I wanted to believe that there was still hope for us, but the trust had been broken, and rebuilding it would take time. Can we start over? He asked, his voice almost pleading. I mean, can we try to fix this? I can't lose you, not over this. I took a moment to consider his words. Starting over won't be easy, but I'm willing to try if you're committed to making things right. It's going to take time, and I need to see that you're serious about changing. I am. I swear, he said, his eyes earnest. I'll do whatever it takes. Then let's get to work, I replied, feeling a flicker of hope ignite within me. You need to speak with a lawyer today, and we'll figure out the next steps together. And you have to be honest with everyone else involved. No more lies, no more shortcuts. He took a deep breath, the weight of our conversation settling in. Okay, I can do that. I'll call them right now. As he reached for his phone, I couldn't help but feel a mix of anxiety and cautious optimism. This was just the first step in a long journey, but at least we were finally facing the truth together. Whatever lay ahead, I knew that we had to hold each other accountable. It was the only way to rebuild the trust that had been lost. In that moment, I realized that family is not just about the good times and shared laughter. It's also about the hard conversations and the willingness to confront the painful realities. As we navigated this turbulent path together, I hoped we could emerge stronger on the other side. But for now, one step at a time was all we could manage. As I sat on the edge of my bed, my mind raced with thoughts about what lay ahead. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the tip of the iceberg. My brother had promised honesty, but could he really deliver? Trust, once broken, was a fragile thing. I had spent the last few weeks trying to gather the pieces of my life after discovering the betrayal that had rocked my world. The weight of the situation pressed heavily on my chest, but I was determined to push forward. The next day, I decided to take a walk to clear my head. The crisp autumn air was refreshing, the leaves crunching underfoot as I strolled through my neighborhood. I needed to think about the next steps. I had a good idea of what the legal process would entail, but navigating the emotional fallout was another story entirely. My brother had always been my confidant, my partner in crime. Now, it felt like he had crossed a line that would be hard to return from. I found a bench in the park and sat down, watching families play together, couples walking hand in hand. It felt surreal to think that my own family was in turmoil, while the world around me seemed blissfully unaware. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through messages from friends who had checked in on me. I appreciated their concern, but it was hard to explain the depth of my frustration and sadness. I felt like I was living in two different worlds, one where everything was fine, and the other where my brother had betrayed me. Later that week, I met with the lawyer I had consulted after the initial shock wore off. She had been straightforward and informative, which I appreciated. As I sat in her office, the walls adorned with diplomas and awards, I felt a mix of nerves and determination. I had a mission now, and I was ready to take action. She explained the legal ramifications of forging a signature and what that meant for both my brother and the house he had taken from me. Hearing the legal jargon made everything feel more real and more daunting. "You have a strong case," she said, her tone reassuring. "But it will take time, and you need to prepare yourself for the emotional roller coaster ahead. Family disputes can get messy." I nodded, already feeling the anxiety creep in, but I knew I had to stay focused on the goal. "What do I need to do next?" I asked, ready to take the reins of my life back. She laid out the steps, gathering evidence, documenting everything, and preparing for possible court proceedings. It felt overwhelming, but I took a deep breath, reminding myself that I was not alone in this. I had my friends, my lawyer, and even my brother, at least for now. I had to believe that he was going to do the right thing. The following weekend, I decided to invite my brother for brunch. I wanted to give him a chance to talk more openly, to gauge if he was truly committed to making amends. I chose a cozy little cafe that had become one of my favorites. The ambiance was warm, the smell of fresh coffee and baked goods wafting through the air. I arrived early, my heart pounding as I waited for him to arrive. When he walked in, his face lit up with a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. I could tell he was still wrestling with guilt, and I felt a pang of sympathy for him despite everything. As we settled into a booth, I could sense the tension between us, like an unspoken cloud hanging above our heads. We ordered our food, and I decided to break the ice. "So, how has your week been?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. He fidgeted with his napkin, avoiding eye contact. "It's been different," he admitted. "I've been thinking a lot about what we talked about." I nodded, prompting him to continue. "And?" I leaned in, eager to hear what he had to say. I know I messed up and I'm sorry. I want to make it right, but I don't know how," he confessed, finally looking me in the eye. I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "You have to be honest with everyone involved, especially Mom and Dad. They deserve to know the truth about what happened. It's the only way to rebuild trust." He sighed, and I could see the conflict etched on his face. "I know, but I'm scared of what it will do to our family. I don't want to hurt anyone more than I already have." "I get that, but staying silent won't help anyone. It'll only make things worse in the long run," I replied, feeling my heart race. As our food arrived, I decided it was time to address the elephant in the room. I reached into my bag and pulled out the deed to the house. I placed it on the table between us, my heart pounding as I did so. "I brought this," I said, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. He looked down at the document, his expression shifting from confusion to realization. "You're serious," he said softly. "More than ever. This is our reality now. We can't pretend it didn't happen," I replied, watching as he took in the weight of my words. He ran a hand through his hair, clearly grappling with the magnitude of the situation. "I never thought it would come to this," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Neither did I, but here we are. We have to face it together, and that starts with you being honest," I urged, feeling a mix of hope and apprehension. As the conversations flowed, I felt a strange sense of clarity emerging. This was more than just about a house. It was about trust, family, and the journey of healing. I didn't know where it would lead us, but I knew I had to keep pushing for the truth, for both our sakes. It was a long road ahead, but I was ready to walk it, one step at a time. The weight of the moment hung in the air, thick and charged, as I watched him process my words. I could see the gears turning in his mind, the tension in his jaw tightening as he wrestled with the reality of what he'd done. It was as if we were standing on a precipice, the ground beneath us crumbling, and I was terrified of the plunge. But I refused to step back. I was tired of running from difficult conversations, especially with him. "I can't believe you'd come here and confront me like this," he finally said, his voice edged with defensiveness. "You don't understand the pressure I was under. I thought I was doing what was best for the family." "Best for the family?" I echoed, my heart racing. "By forging my signature? By making a decision that affects both of us without even asking? That's not how families work, and you know it." There was a flicker of guilt in his eyes, quickly masked by a veil of frustration. "You wouldn't understand. You've always had it easier than I did. Mom and Dad, they trusted you more. I felt like I was living in your shadow." I was taken aback. Those words cut deeper than I expected. I had always seen my brother as the strong one, the one who stood tall in the face of adversity. And yet here he was, revealing a vulnerability I had never noticed. "You think I had it easy? You don't know what it was like for me either. I had to navigate my own challenges, and I had to do it while feeling like I was always being compared to you. We both have our struggles, but that doesn't justify what you did." He dropped his gaze to the table, the weight of my words visibly sinking in. "I was scared," he admitted, almost inaudibly. "I didn't want to lose the house. I thought if I could just get it in my name, I could make it work, but I never meant for it to come to this." I sighed, feeling a mixture of anger and empathy swirling inside me. "I get that, but you can't take away someone's agency and expect everything to be okay. It's not just about the house. It's about our bond. You've betrayed my trust, and that's going to take a long time to rebuild." He looked up at me, his eyes glistening with a mixture of regret and desperation. "I know I messed up, but can't we just forget about it? Move on?" My heart ached at his words. I wanted nothing more than to wipe the slate clean, to return to the days when laughter was abundant, and our biggest worries were about what movie to watch on a Friday night. But life wasn't that simple. Forgiveness isn't that easy. It requires honesty and accountability. "We need to talk about this, not just brush it under the rug." He nodded slowly, the weight of his choices pressing heavily on him. "What do you want from me? What do I need to do to make this right?" I leaned in closer, feeling the intensity of the moment. "First, you need to admit what you did was wrong. Own up to it. No excuses. Then, we can talk about what comes next. But I need to know you're serious about making amends." He took a deep breath, as if summoning the courage to face the truth. "Okay, I admit it. I was wrong. I shouldn't have forged your signature. I thought I was protecting you, but I see now that I wasn't. I'm sorry." Those words, simple yet heavy, hung between us like a fragile truce. It wasn't enough to erase the past, but it was a start. I could see the sincerity in his eyes, and I felt a flicker of hope igniting within me. "Thank you for saying that. It means a lot." We sat in silence for a moment, the air still charged but now tinged with a tentative sense of understanding. I could feel the walls between us beginning to crumble, and in that moment, I knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but it was one I was willing to walk if it meant rebuilding our relationship. "So what happens now?" he asked, breaking the silence. I took a deep breath, ready to tackle the next step of our journey. "We need to figure out the legal side of things. You need to come clean to the rest of the family. They deserve to know what happened. And I need to think about what I want to do with the house. It might not be a bad idea to sell it." His eyes widened, a mix of panic and realization settling in. "Sell it? But that's our childhood home." I nodded, feeling a pang of sadness at the thought. "I know, but it's also a reminder of this betrayal. It's a place filled with memories, but it's also tainted now. I need a fresh start, and maybe you do too. We can't hold on to things that are dragging us down." He looked away, lost in thought, and I could see that he understood the truth in my words. "I guess I've been holding on to the past, thinking that if I could just keep the house, everything would be okay. But it's not just about the physical space. It's about us. It always has been." "Exactly," I said softly. "We have to prioritize our relationship above all else. The house is just bricks and mortar. Our connection is what truly matters. He nodded again, this time with a new sense of determination. Okay, let's do this together. I'll face the family, and we can figure out the next steps with the house. I want to make it right. The resolve in his voice made my heart swell with a mix of hope and apprehension. We had a long journey ahead of us, but for the first time, I felt like we were on the same side. It was time to rebuild not just the trust between us, but the foundation of our family. As we sat there, the weight of the past beginning to lift, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. It wasn't just the hope that our relationship could mend, but a deeper sense of possibility. I could envision a future where the house didn't dictate our worth or our bond as siblings. It was liberating to think that we were finally ready to confront the family, ready to make things right. We spent the next few days going through old family photos and reminiscing about our childhood. It felt therapeutic to sift through those memories, laughing at old inside jokes and shedding a few tears over bittersweet moments. But the reality of our situation loomed large, like a shadow we couldn't shake off. The more we talked, the more I realized that this wasn't just about the house or the betrayal. It was about forging a new path that would allow us to move forward together. Then came the day of brunch. We had decided to meet at our favorite cafe, a cozy little place adorned with twinkling lights and a rustic vibe. It felt almost surreal to think about walking in there, armed with the deed to the house, and the determination to clear the air with our family. I could already picture my parents' faces, the mixture of confusion and concern as we laid everything out on the table. As we arrived, the smell of freshly brewed coffee enveloped us, and the sounds of laughter and clinking plates filled the air. We took a deep breath together as we found a table at the back, away from prying eyes, but close enough to the warmth of the bustling cafe. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins, a mix of anticipation and anxiety. When our parents arrived, they looked surprised to see us both seated together, which was a good sign. But I could sense their curiosity. What could possibly bring us to brunch together in such a united front? As they settled in, I caught my brother's eye. He nodded slightly, a silent reminder that we were in this together. "Hey guys," I started, trying to keep my voice steady. "Thanks for coming. We wanted to talk about something important." My parents exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from curiosity to concern. There's been a lot going on lately, especially regarding the house. My mom looked concerned, her brow furrowing. "What's this about the house?" I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the deed in my bag. "It's about how it was transferred. I found out that my signature was forged. I never signed anything." The silence that followed was deafening. My dad's face morphed from surprise to disbelief. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice low, almost a whisper. I reached into my bag and pulled out the deed, placing it gently on the table like it was a fragile piece of glass. "I have the document right here. This is proof that my signature was never real." My mom gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "Oh my God! Who did this?" "It was me," my brother admitted quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. The confession hung in the air, thick and heavy. "Why would you do something like this?" my father asked, his voice rising. "I thought I was protecting us, protecting our family," my brother said, his eyes pleading for understanding. "I thought if I could just keep the house, we'd all be okay. I didn't want to lose everything we had." I felt a surge of anger and frustration rise within me. "But you didn't think about how this would affect me or our relationship. You made a choice that affected all of us without even considering the consequences." "I know. I messed up," he exclaimed, his voice breaking. I thought it was the only way." My mom reached across the table, her hand trembling as she took my brother's. "We can work through this. We always do. But we need to be honest with each other." I looked at my brother, feeling the tension between us. "This isn't just about the house. It's about trust. I need to know that moving forward, we can be honest with each other, that we can rely on one another." He nodded, tears welling in his eyes. "I promise. No more lies. I want to rebuild this. I want to make things right." The conversation shifted into deeper waters, and as we navigated through the emotional turmoil, I realized that this was a turning point for all of us. It wasn't easy, And there were no quick fixes, but we were finally facing the truth together. As we left the cafe, I felt lighter, even though the road ahead was still rocky. I had no idea what would happen next, but I was determined to rebuild my relationship with my brother, brick by brick, and to reclaim not just the house, but the trust and love that had been lost. I didn't have all the answers, but one thing was clear. This was just the beginning of a new chapter for us. While the past couldn't be changed, the future was still unwritten, and for the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful. As I walked away from the cafe, the crisp autumn air filled my lungs, invigorating me with a sense of possibility I hadn't felt in ages. The leaves crunched beneath my feet, a reminder that change was not only possible, but also necessary. With every step, I could feel the weight of the past start to lift. I had spent so long feeling burdened, drowning in the memories of betrayal and hurt, but now I was ready to embrace the unknown. Over the next few weeks, things started to shift in our family dynamic. My brother and I began to have regular check-ins, just the two of us. We would meet at the same cafe where we had that pivotal conversation, and slowly, we began to peel back the layers of our relationship, exposing the raw, vulnerable parts that had been hidden for so long. It was incredibly hard at times, but I learned that vulnerability is a two-way street. As I opened up about my feelings, my brother reciprocated, sharing his fears and regrets. Each session brought us closer, and with each conversation, I felt the cracks in our relationship begin to mend. Of course, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. There were moments of tension where old wounds resurfaced, and we found ourselves on the brink of reverting back to our old patterns. But each time that happened, I reminded myself why I was doing this. I had to believe that rebuilding our trust was worth the effort. After all, wasn't that the foundation of any strong relationship? I started to keep a journal, jotting down my thoughts and emotions. It helped me process everything more clearly, and I often found myself reflecting on how far we had come. My brother and I also decided to take on the house together. It was a daunting task, but the prospect of working side by side on something tangible felt like the perfect way to reinforce our renewed commitment to each other. We spent weekends painting, cleaning, and brainstorming ideas for how to transform the place into a home we could both be proud of. I found joy in the little things, like picking out colors for the walls or rearranging furniture. It became a metaphor for our relationship, a little messy, a little chaotic, but at the end of the day, it was ours. As we worked, I started to realize how powerful it was to create something together. Each stroke of paint was not just about the house. It was about re-establishing our connection. It reminded me of what it felt like to have a sibling by my side, laughing and teasing each other about our questionable design choices. I found myself opening up more, sharing stories from our childhood that had long been buried under the weight of our shared pain. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden light through the half-finished windows, I looked at my brother and said, "You know, I think we're going to be okay." He smiled back, and in that moment, I realized how far we had come, not just in terms of the physical space we were rebuilding, but in the emotional space we were creating for each other. It felt like we were finally on the same team again. But just as I started to feel a sense of closure, life threw us another curveball. My brother received a job offer in another state, an incredible opportunity that could set him up for success, but also meant he'd have to leave. I was torn. On one hand, I wanted him to chase his dreams. On the other, I feared it would unravel everything we had worked for. We sat down for another heart-to-heart, and I could see the conflict in his eyes. "I don't want to leave you," he said, his voice wavering. "But this job, it could really change my life." My heart ached at the thought of losing him again, but I knew I had to support him. "You have to go. I'll be okay. We'll figure it out," I replied, trying to mask the tremor in my voice. In that moment, I realized the true measure of our progress. Trust didn't mean I wouldn't miss him, or that I wouldn't feel vulnerable again. It meant understanding that our bond could withstand distance, that we could continue to support each other even when we weren't physically together. It was both terrifying and liberating. As he packed his things, we made a pact to stay connected. Video calls, texts, and regular visits, whatever it took to keep the lines of communication open. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I had faith in our relationship now. I felt like I was finally equipped with the tools to navigate whatever life threw at us. When the day came for him to leave, we stood in the driveway, both of us fighting back tears. "I'll always be here for you, no matter the distance," he said, pulling me into a tight embrace. "And I'll always come back for this house." As I watched him drive away, I felt a sense of bittersweet peace wash over me. Yes, we had faced our share of challenges, but we had also embraced the power of honesty, vulnerability, and unconditional love. Looking back now, I realized that those difficult moments were not the end. They were just a part of a much larger journey. Life is messy, relationships are complicated, but in the end, what matters most is how we rise from those challenges. So I ask you, what has been your biggest challenge in rebuilding a relationship? Share your experiences below. I'd love to hear how you navigated those waters. As for me, I'm still on this journey, one step at a time, but I feel equipped to face whatever comes next, not just as a sister, but as a friend.